Welcome back to another reading and correcting with me, Kindar, the Tiger Knights, and Ty, the Tiger Supervisor. These are where I read a chapter from one of my stories and correct it as I go. If you want to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch. And if you are looking to support me, that is on my Patreon. Today we're doing chapter 44 of A Series of Death. Trembor double-checked the address Jasper gave him. He was at the right place. He looked up to the side of the skyscraper. He was fairly confident there couldn't be a bar in that building, at least not the kind of bar the previous meeting had been in. If not for the fact Jasper wasn't someone who joked around, he'd think she'd sent him to the wrong place on purpose. He stepped into a lobby of white marble floor, black columns, and slate-gray walls. A muscular gazelle in uniform sat behind a semicircular desk, watching him. A list of name and room numbers beckoned to him by the bank of elevators, a black plaque with names in polished brass. Great, this was a joke. Mr. Goldenmane? Trevor turned. The uniformed gazelle stopped halfway to reaching him. Not prey freezing up under Predator's gaze, simply him stopping a respectable distance away. Yes? The male smiled. Miss Braid said to go right up. She's waiting for you. 12th floor. Suite 1203. Thank you. Didn't the rent go up the higher the floor was? What was the bison up to? The elevator opened on a hall, suite 1203 facing it. The door was opened, showing a reception area with another gazelle behind the desk, this one female, in a suit and slender. Behind her, a wooden wall blocked the view to the people he could hear speaking, many of them. On the wall, in steel letter, was the name, Braid's Call In and Call Out. What was this? Good morning, the gazelle greeted him. How can I help you? I'm Trembor Goldenmane. I think I'm in the wrong place? He looked at the name on the wall. This was a joke. Mr. Goldenmane, she smiled at him. No, you're in the right place. I have you as her 9 o'clock. You're early. Let me see if she's available. She tapped the earpiece and then entered a number on the console by her screen. This was too elaborate for a joke. What had Jasper been up to? Mr. Goldenmane? The gazelle stood. She'll see you if you'll follow me. Without waiting for him, she walked around the partition. He followed her into a large room with all the people he'd heard talking, seated at individual desks, earpiece in or headset on. He caught enough of the conversations as he walked to understand what this was, but not why Jasper seemed to be one of the people in charge. On the other side of the bullpen, the gazelle knocked on the door, then opened it, motioning for Trembor to enter. The office was plain, a desk with a computer behind which sat the hedgehog typing away, and Jasper seated on the corner of the desk, grinning at Trembor. Well? She asked once the door closed. Trembor debated if he could give in to his curiosity. He was here to help Bo, not for whatever the bison was smiling about. Still, a few minutes shouldn't cause problem. What is this place? A call center, she answered, beaming. He narrowed his eyes, folding his ear back. I worked that out for myself. I mean, what are you doing here? Why is your name on the wall? It's my company. She replied, Did you think I was going to commit crimes my entire life? Yes, he replied without hesitation. He knew she was still involved in crimes. It was why he'd sought her out. Crime doesn't do much for my rating. I needed a proper business for that. So I invested some of my earning into a small company and took over handling calls for the large ones who wanted to cut costs. A lot more than I expected wanted to do that, and here I am. And how many of those people have records? She shrugged. So long as they help push the company's productivity up, I'm not picky about their past. Trevor rubbed his face. This was a front. He was sure of it. But as much as he hated thinking that, it wasn't his job to shut her down. Maybe he'd passed the information to Derrimack and she could quietly investigate. Once she found out what crimes were being committed here, she'd do her job. He took the pack of nip and lobbed it at her. What did you find out, and how didn't they know about that thing? Overconfidence, the hedgehog replied. They have the building shielded to prevent our usual broadcast from getting through. He took the pack, opening the bottom and taking out the black box contained there. This created a dedicated channel on a frequency none of the current shielding blocks. It's expensive and only has short range, so if the receiver isn't close, you're wasting your time. Fortunately for you, Jasper said, I have a fast bike and people who told me where the car was going, so I got here on time. I got there on time. Barely, the hedgehog said. I just implanted my digger program when you left. Fortunately, once in, it can't be blocked. It spreads through her pad, then the computer she uses at her home, and through that, a series of servers I spent the night searching through. Fine. What did you find out? The hedgehog looked at Jasper. Trembor, she said, you have to. What did he find out? He demanded, not liking the stalling. How sure are you they're involved in this? She asked. Of course they're involved. They're the ones with any reason to put pressure on my brother. This is beyond pressure. He's being fed to the Cubs family. I know damn well what's going to happen to him. Why do you think I'm doing business with you? Because I like sullying my hand? Without that evidence, there's nothing I can do. There's nothing in their server, the hedgehog said. My brother did not kill a cub. Trembor glared at the mail and stepped towards the desk, but Jasper interposed herself. We're not saying that he did, she said, and he glared at her. I'm asking if there's anyone else who might have a reason to do this to him, because as far as Delkip can tell, the only thing relating to your brother in their system is the money he owes them. They did this. If you haven't found anything, it's because you aren't as good as you claim. Look harder. She shoved him away. My brother's among the best there is. If he says it isn't there, it isn't there. Trembor glared at her. Do you want it to be? The hedgehog asked. Trembor looked around to glare at him, but he was studying something on the screen. What are you talking about? The hedgehog looked up. I'm in their server. I'm asking you if you want me to make sure there is evidence of the frame up against your brother there. Can you do that? Can you do it? Jasper asked. He shrugged. I have all the reports from the enforcer, the medical examiner, even the RI. I know how it happened. Using that to prove this crime group who orchestrated is simple. No, I'm not going to have you planting evidence, Trevor stated. You just have to look harder. It is there. The hedgehog nodded. Maybe my program will make its way to a different server over the next few days and dig something out we can use. Bo doesn't have days. The lawyer had said he should try for 3 days delay, but how likely was it she could manage even half that? For all he knew, the judge was rendering his verdict right now. Delkip will scrape every bit of those server for something. Isn't that right? Jazz? Hedgehog said, you know that isn't how this works. It's not a room with something rolls in a crack. You're going to go over it again. He paid us to find evidence that will free his brother. Give him the money back or send him away telling him I'll work on it knowing I can't do anything with what I have. Then hide, because once his brother is found guilty, I expect he will want you for dinner. I'm right here, you know, Trevor said. I do. The hedgehog fixed his gaze on the lion. Jazz deals in emotion and the con. I deal in data. I don't lie. Trevor snorted. You just offered to plant evidence. That's just a reframing of reality. Don't bother. Jasper said as Trembor was about to argue. The thing that makes him great with computer makes him a little screwy with the rest. Trembor cursed. He wasn't doing this. He couldn't do this. It went against everything he stood for. They're going to know the evidence was planted, he said. The cyber division within the Enforcer had the best people. They know immediately, so discussing this was pointless. They won't. The hedgehog replied, even those criminals won't be able to tell I was in. I can build a scent trail showing they orchestrated everything with only messages sent back and forth. A few reminder adjusting GPS coordinate. You give me an hour and even the pad owner will believe they were involved in arranging it. Trevor glared harder. He hated how easily the hedgehog made it sound. Just like Marlot did when he told him how he'd extracted this information or that from the network. Crime shouldn't be that easy. The hedgehog raised his hand. Okay, I can wait for more information from my program. How much? Trevor demanded through gritted teeth. Jasper's price was going to be too high. His budget was already stretched with paying this much. One favor, she replied, to be called in at a later date. Trevor stared at her in disbelief. A one-time thing, and I promise I won't have you breaking the law any more than needed. I'm not. He swallowed. He couldn't get in business with her. That was how it started. One favor. Then the evidence of that crime was used to force him to do something else. And again, until he wasn't even a pretense of him not being owned by a criminal. He cursed. It was his pride against Beau's life. Fine. He'd deal with making sure she didn't drag him down to her level once Beau was safe. Maybe he'd eat her and take the final hit. But after Beau was home and free. Do it, Delkip. Where's the restroom? Tremor asked. He was about to throw up. Tremor took his pad out as he paced to check the time. They should be here already. He shouldn't be impatient or even angry at himself. Just this morning his brother had been heading for death and now he was heading home. But being angry was better than feeling sick over how this had happened. Only 2 hours after he left Jasper and their brother, he'd gotten a call from Beau's lawyer. The case was put on hold because new evidence surfacing. An hour later, the charges up against Beau were dropped. He knew someone was expediting things, probably Torim, on the court side, but even with being exonerated, it would normally take days for everything to be processed. Someone on the enforcer's side was speeding things up, and Tremor was sure Derrimack had a hand in making it happen. He also suspected she met little resistance when she told whoever was involved Beau was his brother. Making friends had always been something he knew would pay off in the long run, but he'd never guessed he'd end up pulling those friends into helping with illegal activities against their knowledge. He was happy he hadn't been able to eat anything since leaving Jasper's office, because it meant he had nothing left to throw up. Is Dad coming home? Isenson asked, sitting on the couch, knees pulled to himself, tail wrapped around his feet. He is, Trevor said, then looked at his pad again. Erlich looked at him suspiciously. He is, Tremor repeated. They're just running late. Probably got stuck in traffic. Except rush hour was still an hour away. He hoped the two of them hadn't killed one another. Tremor had planned on being the one to pick up Beau, but their father had heard before he did about Beau's release and had been on the road before anyone knew to stop him. He'd still planned on being there to act as a wall between the two, but his mother had told him Torin would be too happy. Beau was freed for anything harsh. So she talked him into watching Erelex and Isenson. One day, he'd be able to tell her no. He managed it with Serene every so often. So his mother had nothing, and his mother had nothing on that female's menace. Sent a message asking for an update to his father and got an automatic "I'm busy" reply. Still driving, he hoped. He sat and forced himself to remain sitting. Pacing was just fueling the darkness in his mind. His father wouldn't eat Beau. Maybe they'd stop for a bite. Actual food, not out of each other. Would Torin really stay quiet for the entire drive? He hadn't spoken to Beau since finding out about Beau being in debt. His mother had made sure their father couldn't reach him until now. Trevor groaned. Beau was so dead. Erelex eyed him suspiciously, would cause his instant to look up at him and worry. Beau would be fine. Torin wouldn't deprive his grandchildren of their father, no matter how angry he was. Are you too hungry? It would be something to do. Beau's cooler was stocked. He had to give his brother that, no matter how much trouble he was in. He made sure his sons had food. They shook their head. For the best, Tremper decided. The smell of warming meat might be enough to make him throw up. His pad buzzed. Called. Was his father's message said? Was all his father's message said, which he did. Hi, Trember. His father sounded tired. Dad? Where are you? Is everything okay? His nephew stood, eagerly watching him. We're fine. I had to stop at a park to let us cool off. You talk with Beau. He motioned for the two of them to stay on the couch before heading for Beau's bedroom. Of course I talked with my son. Closed his door and walked to the far side, and now, even if his nephews put their ear against the door, they wouldn't hear what Torim said. He'd just have to keep his voice from giving away the situation. It didn't go well. What happened? He asked, instead of pointing out how obvious it was it hadn't gone well. Is Beau with you? He didn't put it past his brother to run so he wouldn't have to deal with their father. His father said nothing. Dad? Is Beau with... No! Torrance snapped. Are you happy? I lost my temper. He told me to pull over because he needed a breather before he started clawing me. The park was there, so I stopped. He got out, and I thought he'd be back after a few minutes. Trevor looked at the door and stifled as he stifled a groan. Dad, how could you let him leave you on his own? What if he goes back and relieve the stress and gets in deeper? Or, more likely, right into that mole's hand to be turned into meat. He won't do that, Trevor stated, and I made it quite clear what I'll do to him if he ever gambles again. Trevor did groan. A scolding? His father thought scolding would keep Bo in line. He got his brother was acting like a cub, but for Torm to treat him like one? His father couldn't have forgotten how addiction worked, could he? How long ago was it, Dad? When did he run off? Maybe 10 minutes now. He cursed and lowered his voice, but couldn't keep the anger from it. Damn it, Dad! Do you have any idea how dangerous it is for him to be on his own right now? Do not take that tone with me, Trembor Goldenmane. I'm still your father, and Bolifern is old enough to know the right thing to do right now. He's probably just walking off his anger as he said he would. Except if Bo had been released, it meant the enforcers had acted on the planted evidence. The criminals who had their claws into his brothers would be on the defensive, and some of them might have worked out it involved Bo. Dad, I need to know the name of the park. I'm going to go look for him. He inputted the name, and it came up on the map, not too far away. Why couldn't the two of them have held up until wait, what? Held it until they were here. At least Bo would have been safe. Plotted the gambling houses nearby. I'll call you once I found him. Were disconnected and left the bedroom, surprised not to find the cops at the door. He tried his brother and found he was still blocked. This was reaching the point of being stupid. There, Alex, I need you to watch your brother. He grabbed his jacket. Is that okay? His ensign asked, and Trevor paused long enough to consider how to answer him. I don't know. Not a lie. He couldn't be sure their father was in trouble yet. He and your grandfather got into an argument, and he stormed off. I can't reach your father, so I'm going to go look for him. Your grandfather will be here soon. Esenson hugged his knee tighter. We're going to be okay, Erlich said, sitting next to his brother and putting an arm around his shoulders. Trevor hesitated, then exited the house. They needed their father more than the comfort his presence offered at the moment. He messaged Torem to come watch the cub as he sat in his car. Then he was driving to begin the search. And this concludes chapter 44 of A Series of Death. If you are enjoying this, please leave a like. If you want to know when the next chapter is going to be up, subscribe and hit the bell. If you want to read the story as well as the other books in the series, it is available at all major e-retailers. If you're looking for a different way to support me, that is on my Patreon, where you can also get access to just about everything else I've written. And if you're looking to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch. The links are in the note, and with that, I shall wish you a good day.